Welcome to the Fall Play YouTube channel. Well, hey everybody, welcome back to another Thirsty for Theory Thursdays. And we again have an excellent, esteemed panel with us today. Let me introduce you all to who's here. We have Daywalker, BB,
Hello?
Obi-Wan, Lily, Zoe, Christy, and Sammy. Well, thanks everybody for joining us today. Today we're going to continue our podcast on the theory tree, where we're just going over some top-level suspects or some top-level theories or just things that bother us, that are logical inconsistencies about the case. And we have our advocates for each one of those. And certainly one of the things that has been posited around the case is, well, how do we know that she just wasn't knocked off by some random serial killer? Today we have Zoe here to talk with us about Andre Martinez. Zoe, who is Andre Martinez?
Well, Andre Martinez was a customer of the Avery salvage yard, and he visited the yard very often, sometimes even multiple times a day. He stated he was friends with Stephen Avery, and the interesting thing was that on November 5th, 2005, when there was a search party on the Avery salvage yard, and when Pam Sturm found the RAV4, Martinez was on the property too. He could also be the Spanish-speaking person Pam referred to in her statement that she saw or heard on that day. And also Earl Avery confirmed that Martinez was on the property that day. And
Zoe,
yeah.
my recollection is listening to the calls, the dispatch calls that Millbilly put out, is that they actually ran his plate. You can hear because when Pam of God found the car, they were quick to shut down the salvage yard. They had people standing by somehow miraculously, right? Didn't let anybody in or out. Didn't they run Martinez's plate? Can't you hear his name on those dispatch calls?
I haven't listened to the dispatch calls, so I'm gonna go with what you say.
I'm pretty sure they are. I wish Millbilly were here to confirm that, but we'll try. I'm going to try and get Millbilly to confirm that for us. So you were saying, I apologize for interrupting.
No, it's okay. Well, what is interesting on that day was that a few hours later, it was around 1 p.m., Martinez got home and he attacked his wife and with an axe. And he also attacked the child and a dog. Well, nobody got killed, but the wife was severely injured. Yeah, that was interesting on the 5th. And according to Wisconsin state records, Martinez was first taken into custody on November 8th. And we all know what happened on November 8th, right?
They discovered some bones on November 8th, right?
What else?
Oh, you're gonna have to let us know.
Well, that was the day Lang found the RAV4 key, right?
Oh, that's right. Yep.
So if they took him into custody, maybe he could have the keys of the RAV4.
And it's very possible. Very possible.
Yeah, because when
I like that a lot.
Yeah, when Barb was visiting Brandon in prison one day, Martinez came to her and he said to her, "I know they didn't do it." So Martinez knows more than he says.
You're gonna have to back up the truck a little bit right there, Zoe. How was it that Martinez was in a position to talk to Barb again?
Apparently, Brandon and Martinez were both in the same prison.
I see. So during one of Barb's visits to Brendan,
yes.
This is when this incident happened of Martinez coming up to Barb.
Yes.
And he said what again? He said that he knows that Brendan didn't do it?
I know they didn't do it.
Wow. I wonder how he would know that.
Yeah, well, there are some people who made some statements to law enforcement that on Halloween 2005, Andres Martinez, Roberto Brooks, and his girlfriend Dawn Hausschultz, Stephen Avery, and another Stephen were having a bonfire and a party at Stephen's residence. And there are also some statements that Teresa Halbach was there as well. But this is not confirmed because we don't have Kim Skarlinski's reports.
It's shocking. You don't mean to tell me that information was deliberately left out of Queso. You certainly can't be insinuating that. That would be impossible for anyone on this podcast to believe.
Well, just let your imagination play the game.
Yeah, my imagination says that if it didn't inculpate Stephen Avery, it wasn't worth putting in Queso.
Exactly.
But that's just me. Maybe other people have different opinions than I do.
Yeah.
So that's a great theory. It is. We don't know. None of us were there. No one knows what happened to Teresa. It's quite possible that it was some random act of violence, and it's very strange that some guy who was on the Avery salvage yacht on the 5th goes home and what did he do? Hit his wife in the face with an axe?
Yeah. I don't know if it was her face, but yeah, he attacked her with an axe. He was a meth user and he was under drugs when he attacked her, and he said he had blackouts. So maybe he just forgot he killed Teresa.
That's quite possible. There's a lot of forgetting going on.
Yes.
It was actually the back of her head, someplace near her neck.
Yeah, that
where
could be.
the main blow was, I do believe.
Yeah, could be, yes.
Yeah. There's another serial killer whose name is often thrown around in this case, Edward Wayne Edwards. Does anybody want to give us 30 seconds on who Edward Wayne Edwards is?
I will. He's a cop, an ex-cop called Cold Case Cameron has wrote a book about him. And he believes he committed every crime ever committed in the United States, from the Black Dahlia all the way through mailing anthrax to them people. And yeah, and he is literally down for, I think, 3 or 4 people that he confessed and admitted to killing. One being an adopted son, a couple for sure. And my belief on him is that he was too old and too out of shape at the time of this. There's no proof he was in Wisconsin.
But he did hold. He was a Wisconsin resident at some point, right? Which is
right,
why his
and he
name
did
comes up.
frequent here. Yes, Wisconsin. But I believe he was too close to being on oxygen and too close to being in a wheelchair, because a few years later he's definitely on oxygen and in a wheelchair. And I see no way. There is a group of people that did a bunch of research and claimed that the Sicky letter was written by him. Yeah.
But that's not to say it's not. It's just just in principle, it being a random act of violence. There are a lot of women that go missing in Wisconsin, a strange number, unusually large.
Yes.
This random act of violence theory is something that you just can't dismiss out of hand.
Right.
So where's Andre Martinez now, Zoe?
He's still in prison, and I hope he won't get out until he dies.
I think there was also I think there was some talk that if he got out, that he might be deported or something. So I don't think he's a national. I think he was from elsewhere. Yeah.
Do you know where he's from, Zoe? Is he Mexican? Certainly a Hispanic last name.
Yeah.
He's from Cuba.
He's from Cuba, yes.
Cuba. Wow. Okay. Well, anybody have any other comments on Martinez?
I just have one about Edwards.
Go ahead.
10 seconds on Edwards. that same investigator that BB mentioned, he believes almost 100% that at one point in time in Making a Murderer, that you can see Ed Edwards.
Oh, yeah, there's that too. Yeah.
Yeah, that you see Ed Edwards
see
in the
him
background. I think
at the
it was
trial?
Fallon.
Or?
Yeah, at the trial.
In the hallway.
Fallon and I think Kratz were talking, and you see this random old guy just staring at him, and he believes that it's a possibility that that is Edwards.
Yeah.
But,
There
this
was there was a thing in the what's his name? The one with the little boys that got killed. Where he showed up in their West Memphis 3. He showed up supposedly in that documentary at the graveyard when they were filming West Memphis 3, one of theirs, Paradise something and Paradise or something, Paradise Lost. There's a graveyard scene and they say that's Edwards there, and that he supposedly committed West Memphis 3. But that guy Cold Case Cameron is trying to sell a book, you know.
Yeah. But was that part of Edwards' MO that he tried to show up in cases that he was involved in?
That Cold Case Cameron, I think, is the one who said that was him in West Memphis 3 case in that documentary. And then later is trying to sell it that he was in. But somebody came forward, I don't know who, I don't know how much documentation that is, and said that that's just a random old guy that they knew that used to live in Manitowoc area, and that it wasn't Edwards. So.
Well, there's certainly random old guys no matter where you look, especially if you look at my house.
Yeah, it's somebody that was sent forth that died since the trailer. I mean, since the before Making a Murder came, after the trial, that old guy had died. That was from the town there that they said he was.
Excellent. All right. Well, if anybody have any further comments on random acts of violence, Martinez, Edwards? Okay, excellent. Well, let's move on from there. Let's move on to some other suspects in our theory tree. Lily, how about we discuss a little bit about the Avery brothers?
The Avery brothers. Oh boy.
The Brothers Grimm.
Yeah, pretty much. Actually, reading up about them, I kind of feel bad for them because their life just must not be, that good, because they're all criminals. One thing or another, most of them, besides Stephen, most of them, sexual charges against women, disorderly conducts, family altercations.
Well, you do know that Dennis Vogel assumed that the crime against Sandra Morris was sexually motivated, right?
Oh, don't get me going on the barfly, because that is all she is, a barfly.
I knew she's one of your favorite topics.
Judy Dvorak, they ruined many lives. Yep.
So what is it that leads you to believe? What in your opinion? What are sort of the main the motivators? What motivates Chuck and Earl as possible suspects?
Well, I'm not sure. I don't think I don't think it was done together. If either one of them had anything to do with it. Now, Chuck. Now, Chuck, I think because, he has second-degree sexual assault, raping and trying to strangle his wife with a telephone cord. They found 2 police badges in the desk drawer at the yard of Chuck's desk. He could have.
Do they belong to Arland Avery by any chance?
I don't know exactly. I don't recall who they belonged to, but there were family, that was in law enforcement, so it's a possibility.
It
Kept as a
always struck
secret
me.
or
It
whatever.
always struck me how much Chuck looks like Arlen Avery. As a matter of fact, I first saw Ma'am, I saw Arlen talk. I first thought that was
Uh-oh.
Chuck, and you
Uh-oh.
put on a badge, right? He's got to look a lot
Uh-oh.
like Uncle Arlen. Here we go, Theory Thursday. Welcome to Theory Thursday. So,
Right,
why
right.
would he have a badge? Well, he does resemble a certain Manitowoc County police officer. But anyway.
So, hey, he grabbed one of the badges. There were guns all over the yard, which that is not unusual. So I'm not, saying anything on that. But, he grabbed one of the guns and because he was more into the random women,
Mm.
stalking them
Yeah.
and
There's
stuff like
some
that.
there's some stories in the case though about that. Didn't he leave $50 for one woman that he was interested in?
I believe so. Left $50 and he left flowers. He actually one time got caught by the ex-wife standing in her bedroom, staring at her sleeping.
Well, that's
Um,
creepy, isn't it?
yeah. And he's been
Is,
caught, following women, getting their
that wasn't
names from the junkyard
is
paperwork, and
yeah. Isn't that what
yeah.
your hope is? That random men are going to start leaving $50 inside of your
Well,
door?
actually, I don't think I'd say no to that. Just leave $50 and go.
A particular story. It might have been that same woman that he left the $50 for. But didn't he also harass her when she came back to the Avery salvage yard to pick up the stuff out of her car?
Yeah, she was very uncomfortable. Yeah.
Yeah. So he's a creeper.
Yeah.
He definitely makes women uncomfortable, and he is not shy, sort of, about being, so let's say, confrontational, if you will, in a sexual way to strange women, right? And
Yes.
that to me is really a sign, right? I mean, it would take, there's one that one thing that they. People who have accused Bobby Dassey and maybe even accused Stephen of is sort of, somehow coveting Teresa so many times, developed an infatuation.
Yeah.
But Chuck is not afraid to, brand new women, go and
Exactly.
do things to make them extremely uncomfortable. I mean, who knows? Teresa didn't stop on the way out at the office and say, "Hey, look, I got a broken blinker. You got something I can use to fix it?"
Yep.
And guess who's manning the station?
Yep. Exactly. And like I
Well,
said, he had police badges. She could have pulled out
any
of the
woman who
yard.
went there and wrote a check would be giving him their address also. If they wrote
Yeah.
a check
Right.
for their
Yeah.
parts.
Yeah.
Yeah, they had their
It was
address.
documented. He would get their addresses off of paperwork.
My checks had my phone number on it. I don't know about yours.
No, just the basics.
Yeah.
Just the basics on mine. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, in Massachusetts, they'll make you write your phone number down if you pay by check in a lot of places, because if it bounces, they want a phone number to call.
Oh, yeah.
That's not an unreasonable request as a check writer that I often get.
Yeah.
What about Earl?
Earl, Earl, I'm reading here in a news article that he was arrested after his wife claimed he beat her and choked her during a drunken argument.
That would be Candy Avery?
It doesn't say, but probably it was, because he was married to her at that time. So yes.
I don't think he was actually married to the father of his earlier children, right? I think that Candy is his either
I think
his
the
only
only
wife
wife.
up to that point.
Yeah, that's what I believe. Yep. And he did serve time in jail for that. And then a few years later, in '95, he was charged with sexual assault of a child. We don't know which one that was, but he did serve 45 days in jail for that. And then he got caught filming children in the bathroom.
It was 2 children on that first one.
It was 2? Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And we always
Yeah.
thought they were Candy's children from a previous, but in the phone call, when Steve and his mother are discussing it, she said that's from his last family or previous family, last family. So I don't.
Hmm.
So his like full-blooded children?
I believe they're with Candy. I believe
Oh.
they're all with Candy. Maybe he had a girlfriend or a live-in or something that had her own children when he met her, because we
Oh.
don't find no record of a marriage anywhere.
Yeah.
So maybe they were just stepchildren from a live-in or something that
Yeah.
the 2 counts were from.
Well, long story short, he assaulted children.
Yeah.
Right.
So, but the interesting thing, with Earl on that, on the case is he and his friend, Robert Fabian,
Robert Fabian
They were out
is a
hunting.
little bit more than his friend, right? It is his friend, but he's also related to Earl Avery, isn't he?
I looked that
It's-
up and all I could find was
it's-
friend.
It's Earl. I think it's Earl's brother-in-law.
I don't know. It's a possibility. It's a possibility. Anything's
Well,
possible in this case.
we'll look that up,
Good
and if it's
Lord.
not right, Zoe can cut all this crap out.
Exactly.
I'm pretty sure that Robert Fabian is Earl's brother-in-law.
Yeah. See, I had heard that, but when I went to look, to verify, I could only find friend. So
Yeah, it might be that his wife and Candy's wife, Candy are sisters. That's the way that I thought it was.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
That's
that
what
could
it is.
be.
Yes, that's what
That
it is.
could be, yeah, yeah. So yeah, yeah. So Earl, who's a nasty, icky creature, and Fabian, we don't know a whole lot about. They were out hunting supposedly that day. At that time,
And that
out
day is the 31st of October. What do you mean?
Yep. When Teresa was supposedly in the area around that time.
Yep.
And they were out using a 22
Oh,
to rabbit hunting.
excellent. I know I get a lot of rabbits around my house, and they usually come out right before dusk. That's when they're usually out.
Yeah.
But if they were going to get ready for that, they were. But what do you remember what they were? How were they getting around? Were they sort of hiking around in their hunter's boots, or how are they getting around the yard?
I heard that they were using Mama Avery's golf cart.
Oh, not that same one the cadaver dog sit on.
Yeah.
You couldn't mean that one.
Yeah, actually. Yep.
Wow.
They really liked that cart.
But when they were interviewed, they certainly must have fessed up to the police right away that they were out rabbit hunting on the 31st. Isn't that right?
As far as I'm aware, they did.
Well, sorry. Earl Avery said it was on the 3rd, and Robert Fabian said.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
Robert Fabian
Yes.
also said it was on a Tuesday. So
Yeah,
they did not fess up
they
right
have.
away.
Yeah, they were all mixed up in their times.
And it wasn't and as a matter of fact, what they said they were going to do, what minimally, at least what they admitted to the police, was that there was all this brush that had been cut down, and we know what happened to that brush, don't we? That brush met a sad fate.
It was
Stephen
up in
burned it on the 31st, so it wasn't even there on the 3rd.
Yeah.
So after much consultation with their respective wives, they finally said, "Oh, yeah, I guess it was the 31st of October after all, that we were on the Avery salvage property, armed with guns,
Right,
shooting
right.
at things."
Right. Yep.
So that's very suspicious, very very suspicious. And Earl being a creeper as well. Who knows what his
Yep.
friend Robert Fabian. But let's take, if you could indulge me for a second, let's take a look at, could we talk about another angle? So Chuck and Earl have been running the salvage yard for the past umpteen years, right?
Yeah.
The father, the old man, Alan Avery, is pretty much he's working, but for all practical purposes, he's sort of in a working kind of retirement.
Yeah.
And the business is being run. As a matter of fact, if you look at the picture of the Avery salvage yard, it'll say Chuck and Earl, right? At the top. So they've been running this business. Stephen's been in prison for 18 years, and he's been out for 2 years, so it's 20 years they're running the business. And out comes Stephen out of prison, and he's looking at this gigantic windfall. What do you think he's telling his family he's going to do with the with some of his money?
I
Right?
think he's telling people he's gonna buy Manitowoc and kick everybody out.
He's gonna buy that. He's got, but a lot of people don't realize, but it's actually Dolores that actually owns that property, right? And Stephen has a great relationship with his mother. If you guys don't believe that, just listen to the calls. He is incredibly patient with her, and it's really her that steps up to help him pass the time. And she's asking him how to fix the remote control on the TV, and he's like, but anyway,
really some of those calls were really cute. I my opinion has changed a little bit on the family, as in, I don't think anybody I want to hang out with, but they're simple people,
Right. So you can see Stephen maybe saying something like, "Oh, I want to buy the business out. I want to buy. I'm gonna buy Ma out, and then I'm gonna be the owner of the business, right?" What do you think that? You think Chuck and Earl might have been upset about
that? Probably went over like a lead balloon.
Right.
Because I'm telling you, I know it wasn't Stephen's fault that he got sent away to prison, but you're going to come back here and tell me you're going to take over after I've been working my ass off all these years? Yeah.
I can't see that flying off very well. Now, not that they might. I mean, that would be, would they be willing to help in a conspiracy? Could
for a while,
Earl had a special friend, right?
Yeah, they were really on my radar for a while, because who knows the yard better? Who could get by Bear to plant bones, quote unquote, in the fire pit? It just really, who could sneak around the place but them and not get caught?
Who admits to being Earl's good friend? Who says Earl's my good friend? A certain sergeant for the Manitowoc Police Department, named Andrew Coburn. That's my friend.
Yeah.
So,
and their wives are friends.
Their wives are friends.
Yep.
All right. It's certainly a small town. Everybody knows everybody. And on Theory Thursday, it's all about the connections that you can make, and what are people's real motivations to do this?
Yep.
And beyond sort of being a sort of a sexually motivated, everybody wants to believe that Teresa Hallback was raped, and she might not have been raped.
We have no clue.
We don't know what happened to her.
Nope.
She might still be alive, right, BB?
Very well could be.
We just don't know.
Her up. We don't know. She just disappeared.
Yep, absolutely.
And they cleaned her up. They spent so much time cleaning up her image for court that we don't even know who she really is,
Or who she hung out with, or anything like that, right? On a regular basis. Her phone calls certainly don't give that away, in my mind anyway. But so I think there's a lot of different possible angles on Chuck and Earl. There's a lot of lies being told if you read the Casso report.
Yeah.
The Casso report says that Earl Avery did not talk. All right. And when they brought him in
with him.
But what do we have? We have his his recorded interview, don't we?
Yep.
So
rather lengthy one too.
Yeah. So. And he was throwing Steve under the bus left and right. And I would just like to point out, I know this is a Theory Thursday, but Earl himself says that Marie fell for Stephen, and every time they turned around, Marie was with Stephen.
That's a great point. A
Yeah.
lot of people like to say that, oh, Stephen, he's a creeper. He had intercourse with his
Yeah.
teenage relative, making
Yeah.
it sound like incest. Now, I wouldn't be happy if my 17-year-old went off with my brother either.
Yeah.
But if you caught me saying that, yeah, it was the 17-year-old that was infatuated and initiated it, then I'd kind of like, okay, well, my brother, maybe he should have known better. My brother wasn't in prison 18 years.
Right. And plus, and
I-
then later on, now that we have the Stephen calls, he tells his mother that Marie wrote letters that he wants saved when she's over cleaning his trailer, because Marie talks about how Earl molested her. Nothing about Stephen raping her, nothing like that. But Stephen has proof.
Yeah, in his
And
little safe box or whatever it
and
is.
I don't
Yeah.
think that he and Marie even had sex. I think that it was just a close relationship. I'm not sure. But I just
yeah,
wanted
a little
to clear
bit too
that up
close
because that's
for
really,
comfort.
really
Yeah.
like yeah. So
Yeah. I mean, again, a lot of what goes on here is not behavior that we'd condone in our own family,
Yeah.
but we have to ask ourselves: is this evidence? Is this behavior evidence that he was a murderer? And it's not like he was confrontational with Marie. I think there's a lot of lies in the Casso report. It was like Wendy Baldwin went to interview with Marie. Marie's name is redacted in the Casso report. And it was clearly a very uncomfortable interview for her. We all know Wendy, the cross burner Baldwin, what she's like. So.
Yeah. So there was sibling rivalry. There was anger and resentment amongst the brothers, and I could see where they wouldn't want him around. I don't know if it was enough to commit murder and frame him for it, but I could see if maybe something happened and they were asked to help.
Yeah, there's a lot more motivations than just sort of the creeper one, which is in and of itself enough. But let's lay all the theories out for the theory tree, right? We want a nice bushy theory tree.
Hey, exactly. There's a lot of it. Oh boy.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, anybody have any more questions on Chuck and Earl or even Robert Fabian? Any comments? Awesome. Great. Well, why don't we move on? Somebody who I always enjoy hearing from is Sammy. Sammy, what have you got for us today on Theory Thursday?
Well, we couldn't do this and leave out Scott Tadich, could we?
Oh, no, we could not, could we?
Well, we all know he's got quite the temperament. I want to tell you who is Scott Tadich. He's now the stepfather to Barb's boys. Back then, he was Barb's boyfriend. He was dating his cousin's wife or ex-wife. Let's put it that way.
Do you think the boys call him Dad?
Probably not. And they married before the trials. That's important too.
Why do you suppose that was?
Probably so his wife couldn't testify against him in case he really did do something.
Oh, wow. What do you know about that? What a
do you know?
convenient time. That's one of our favorite words on this podcast is convenient.
Yeah.
We're going to have to get the church lady like Dee Dee says.
And although he says he took a vacation day because his mom had surgery that day, he was employed at Wisconsin Aluminum Foundry in October 2005 at the time of Teresa Hallback's disappearance. So he's got a rap sheet of domestic violence, and one offense date would be May 14, 2002. He pleaded no contest August 15th, 2002, and ended up with 18 months to serve for that. Proof for his temper is found in a call made by Stephen Avery to Barb on October 24th, 2017, from Waupun Correctional Center, discussing new evidence, where he Scott just loses it. He loses it. And you
I
can
seem to
see his
recall
temper is on display there.
I seem to recall he threatens to put Stephen in the ground and calls him a jailbird
Absolutely.
mother bleeper. You ruined my
Yep.
life.
Yep.
And he just goes on, and he's actually questioned about that later, and actually doesn't recollect the statements that he's made. That's how often a tantrum he was.
Yeah. And someone like that with that sort of temperament could do something so they don't remember something as simple as that conversation. That's
what else
scary.
don't they remember? Right.
Right.
What else?
That's exactly right.
So
So,
is
and
there
it's really
something?
unfortunate for him. It's unfortunate for him because he had so many opportunities with all the interviews to get his shit straight. Excuse my French. But he messed up on his timeline and his alibi so many times, and it didn't ever seem to line up with anyone else's, like Barb's.
Oh, Scott Tadich's story has changed a few times, hasn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. He can't
Uh,
even decide whether she stayed the night or didn't that night.
that's right.
Yeah. And then, we can have one way to try to pinpoint a timeline by when the program they were going to watch, Prison Break, was going to air, because he did not have it recording. He did not have Vivo or TiVo or whatever they called it back then. In some of the evidence for this is found for February 27, 2007, with Judge L. Lewis, where Kratz and Strang, he's up on the stand, and Strang points out all of his inconsistencies, even referencing to him DCI reports where they have him written down for prior statements that don't match what he's testifying to in that current day.
One of those things I remember being the height of the fire. I thought I don't remember whether it was Dean or Jerry that cross-examined him.
It was
but he
Strang.
basically he says, well, when you first got interviewed about this, you said the fire was 3 feet tall, and you just told Sweaty Boy that that the flames were 10 feet tall. Do you think you're remembering it better now, or do you think your recollection was better shortly after you just saw it? And he just kind of shakes his head and said, yeah, probably back then, and like walks off the stand. Like he's like, yeah, I'm lying. Nobody gives a shit. Yeah, see you later.
Well, basically, it was actually kind of comical if you really look back at the way that Strang drug him through this. He was like, do you think your memory was better back then, or is it better now? And this is after he's already testified that this flame was up to the garage, roof.
Right. They're diverting planes across the United States because the flames are so high, right? Yeah.
And then he points out what it was that he said. He gave him exactly the page, the report from DCI, and told him exactly what paragraph to read. And then, of course, by the time Strang's done with him, he's like, do you or don't you remember this? Do you or don't you remember that? To the point of Scott can't even remember shit no more at all.
Yeah,
so
he's not the brightest
Kratz
bulb
gets
that
back
ever,
up there and tries to straighten it back out, and he can't. So, yeah, the damage is done.
The damage has
been
done.
So that right there, but that tells you right there, all of this, this one day tells you he's willing to lie under oath.
Right.
He's caught doing it, and then he can't even back up his own crap, in any way, shape, or form. And it doesn't really seem to bother him. The next thing that really bothers me in the end is where, when his wife's son is convicted and this child ends up facing a lifetime of prison, what's he doing? He's sitting there smiling. He literally smiles.
Can you imagine that? That's
Yeah.
just that's what type of
Which
person?
kind of brings me to Barb because, first of all, we know her in the beginning as Yonda. But when you go and you look her up, it says Barbara Ellen Tadich Yonda Nee Avery. Whatever. Okay.
She's
So
got more names than Lola Falana.
yeah. Her current commitment is to Tadich, I guess. Tadich. And my best assumption is no matter what he says or does, she's going to be backing him, period. The very fact that she married him before the trials tells me something also there. But when she gives her statements, when she's interviewed by Wendy Baldwin, this is where it comes in with his various different stories don't match, because at one point during that period of time, he was trying to say she stayed the night, and then Barb says she got home at midnight.
Right. And of course, we have Stephen's phone call to Jody on Halloween that says there she goes again. So Stephen, who is obviously not trying to fabricate a story on Halloween yet, because he hasn't even aware that somebody's missing. Why is he going to lie about Barb showing up and leaving? I think that was around 9 o'clock. Hillbilly would say, he'd say, no, that's 9:10.
Will you help me with one little detail?
Sure.
What is this business about him freaking out about blood on his clothing? Is he at work and gets some kind of notice?
He gets a phone call from Barb, I think, at work at the aluminum factory. We're going to come back to that in a second. And Barb tells him that they're closed from one of the kids. I don't know how the kids got blood, and he freaks out. He freaks out about that. And why? How come?
Why? Because if you're an avid hunter, which he is, you would think at some point something's going to get on something, and why freak out about it if it's a regular thing for you? I don't know how they do all that stuff. I'm not a hunter. I don't know how you separate your stuff. But if it was just a simple case of him having hunted or cut something up or whatever, and it was an animal that he hunted, what would the big deal be? Unless
exactly. Yep.
It was the blood of somebody that should not be there. Like a human being.
And there was reason for him to believe, perhaps, that person's blood got on somebody else's clothes that he might know, and and would have been washed in the same washing machine, for example.
Mm-hmm. So you want to go back to the where he worked? Can you say a smelter?
What would raise a red flag about an aluminum smelter in this case? Anybody want to chime in on that?
Well, maybe the fact that somebody was cremated.
Somebody was cremated,
and the Sikhi letter.
The Sikhi letter, yes, thank you very much. That's what did the Sikhi letter say, BB? Did it say, dear Earl, we're breaking up, or is that a different?
It says that the body was burnt up in an aluminum smelter at 3 a.m. And we have found out through the phone calls that Scott worked the afternoon shift.
That is exactly the thing that might cause you to even look at Scott Tadich at that moment.
Right.
In my mind.
We're not done with Scott. Trust me, we're far.
Oh no. No.
So Scott also played. He had an instrumental role in the trial in verifying Bobby Dassey's whereabouts, right? Because Bobby claims that he left the Avery salvage yard, and he claims he went a certain way, and he says he passed along the way, going the opposite way from him.
Yep.
Scott Tadich, right? And Bobby says something very, very strange in my opinion. I can't even imagine saying this. I passed Scott. You should ask him what time it was. He'll know exactly what time it was. How can he be sure? right? Is that's a direct quote from the castle, from the
Yep.
interview. How can you be sure, right? If I
No, there's
pass
no
you in the street,
corroborating.
yeah. How could I be sure? I pass you in the street. What did I see you glance down at your clock or looking at your watch or something like that? How does he know that Scott's going to be so in touch with exactly what time it is, unless they had previously coordinated? What I want you to tell him
Oh,
is,
yeah.
try and put the time on me. And
But
and
how
Bobby,
smart is that to indicate yourself like in such a way that you're going along with whatever his story is. That's what it is.
Yeah. Yeah, he's going to know exactly what time it was, right? I
Yep.
know for a
Yep.
fact because I've
Just
already
like that
corroborated.
the
He's got a
assumption
good
was
answer
there
for
he
you.
was going hunting. Yeah.
Yep.
The
Yeah.
assumption was there he was going hunting, and he was questioning why would he know that if you didn't tell him you were going hunting, why would he know that? Why would he know that, for a fact?
Yep. Exactly. So
How would he know that if you didn't tell him?
Yep. Excellent. One more thing about Scott. He makes a statement after Stephen's trial. Does anybody want to tell us and sort of remind us what his statement was after Stephen's trial, after Stephen's conviction?
Was it something?
Doesn't he say
Christy.
that this was the
Yep.
greatest day of his life or something?
Mhm.
That this is the
Yep.
greatest day of my life. This is the great something around those.
Yeah, he
Greatest
says that,
day,
and he
yeah,
said-
the greatest thing
Greatest
that
day
could
of
have
his
ever
life.
happened.
Could have ever happened. And he says
Yep.
he adds on to it and says, got what he got coming to him. I knew you guys would remember. Well, who says that? That's your.
Who said somebody that's sweating it? Somebody that's sweating it.
Oh yeah, right. Somebody who's feeling a lot of relief.
So Scott Tadich, if you're PO'd about being part of this topic, I'm going to let you know right now you made too many mistakes, and you are responsible for all of this action. I'm serious.
for
All
the
of the
attention.
things that anyone could possibly have to say about you is on your own behalf.
Your own doing.
Your own
That's
doing.
right.
You brought it on yourself. The scrutiny, by changing stories, odd behavior, corroborating Bobby. I'm sure the police
a
put a
look at
lot of
yourself.
pressure.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure the police put a lot of pressure. So yeah, one other thing before Scott is such a rich topic. During that same call that you mentioned, Sammy, Barb says to Stephen, and I always found this a very interesting statement. Barb says to Stephen as the fight is beginning in the background. Barb's on the phone actually relaying the fight between Scott and Stephen, right? Barb's in the middle. She says to Stephen, "You're going to have a dead sister." Remember?
Yep.
The first time I heard that, I thought that, oh my God, is she sort of threatening that her life is in such a disarray that she's going to kill herself? Is that what she says? Or is there another way to interpret that as Zellner begins to uncover evidence, you're going to have a dead sister? What?
Well,
is she saying, go ahead. Yeah.
Part of my interpretation is that she knows something more about this situation because somebody's likely to off her.
Yeah. All right. Exactly.
In the recent phone calls.
Go ahead. Yep.
In the recent phone calls, Barb's in the background somewhere saying when Steve was talking to his mom, that the cops told her, do you want to keep on living or do you want to stay alive? Something to that effect. Yeah, and then she also states that she said that they could only have 20 minutes with Blaine to talk to him because she's babbling in the background.
Yep. So
yeah.
I think that you really need to think hard about what would, and this phone call that we're talking about, by the way, with between Barb and Stephen, I think that happened in like 2010, 2011. If somebody can remind us of that. But it was not anywhere.
I actually have the date here somewhere, and I'm trying to remember where I wrote it. But it was like in October sometime in 2017.
2017, yeah. It's pretty recent compared to the events of this.
So I mean, you figure this is going on even in 2017, this sort of, you know, the nonsense, the fighting, the bickering, the talk of having a dead sister. I mean,
Yeah.
it just
Why did
speaks
she say that?
volume.
I think
My
that it's
my
worth a good thing.
interpretation is that she has learned and discovered more if she didn't already know a whole lot more to begin with.
It's hard to believe that there wasn't a lot of theory craft going around the Dassey, Jonda, or Tadich dinner table during the time from October 31st to November 9th.
There
and
had to
beyond.
be.
And beyond. Yeah, it's just,
There's also a
so-
lot of talk that Scott, after testifying, got his debt wiped out and got part of his criminal record removed from the records.
yes.
Well, I'll tell you what.
I mean,
What's still public is when he had the incident. Scott Tadich had the incident with the domestic violence. Michael Lambert was the lawyer, and it was just over about between fines and fees over $1,000 and 18 months, you know, in jail. And it was with Wellnets. The incident was supposed to have happened in, they said on the documents, like 2002, but I think that there was problems with her, between him and her in 2001, where she had a temporary restraining order. He was calling her repeatedly at work, threatening to kick her ass, followed her, even forced himself into her home once. It's alleged he was arrested in 2002 for having assaulted her, for trying to throw him out of her home. He shoved her against the wall, threw her phone so she couldn't call for help, punched her not once but twice with a closed fist. All this is an Avery court filing. Some of the Avery documents that were requested would be one of them, because they're trying, you know, for sure to show that there's other people out there that could have done this and why and what kind of people they are.
yeah, I've also heard that his record was expunged as well, BB, possibly as payola for the nice help
Yeah,
that he gave them
that
during the
and-
trial, right? Yeah,
And his debt, yeah.
yeah.
A big
And some
portion of
financial
his
debt
debt.
as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard. I don't know this for a fact, but they live in he and Barb live in a house right now that is a little bit above their means, let's say.
Well, somewhere the mom says, oh, she can't take off work, just take off work to go in case Brenda does get out when they were going to let her. And she says she has $1,000 a month house payments.
Pretty steep.
Yeah. For a couple of
Okay.
factory workers, yeah.
Anybody else have any comments on Scott? He's a topic we could go on with forever. You got anything more for us, Sammy?
Well, I just think if you go to looking up some stuff, you know, there's a whole lot there that's actually in documentation, even his record shows still. I found it, so anybody else could too.
Christy, you have something about Scott?
It's not really about Scott so much as it is just about the whole family in general. They don't like us pointing fingers at them or talking about these theories or whatever, but I have to say their behavior is what makes us question the changing statements, the elusiveness when police are trying to question you. I mean, some of them hid under a pile of dirty laundry. You know, they made them the biggest one hid under a pile of laundry. It's just
That would be a big pile of dirty laundry. Eh?
no kidding, man. Do your laundry. I mean, it's just they did this. Whether they are guilty and really have an involvement in Teresa's disappearance, death, whichever theory you go with, they have nobody to blame but themselves for us looking at them and pointing these fingers and asking these questions. The changing statements, the elusiveness, all of it together, they have nobody but to blame They have nobody to blame but themselves
Yeah.
for
Well, Scott,
their sketchy appearance.
Scott, October 24, 2017, there was a phone call from your brother-in-law to his sister, and it was recorded by Wilpon Correctional Center. You showed your ass.
He showed his ass a couple times. He showed his ass on Twitter. He showed
I'm
his
just
ass
saying.
a couple times. He should,
Mhm.
yeah.
Well,
It's
there's
there.
also something about when Brendan was going to get out, him saying, well, he's not going to lay up in my house playing video games all day or something. I'm not sure where that came from,
Yes.
but I've heard that
yes.
tossed around a lot. Yeah.
I don't remember where it came from either, but
Her,
yes.
her
Scott was
disabled son,
demanding
when he gets out of prison. Yeah.
is going to have to get a job and contribute. He's just not gonna, yeah.
He'd probably
And
be
Scott was-
eligible for Social Security with his IQ, for God's sakes.
And
Right.
Scott was
Yeah.
also very angry about Brendan coming home because that would mean Scott couldn't have his guns anymore.
Well, a benefit of him
Oh, I didn't realize
alibying and a benefit of him alibying Bobby would be that way Brendan would go down for it and not Bobby. Because then Bobby's already 18 or about 18 and is about to be gone out of the house, where Brendan is very disabled, could probably get SSI and would be there forever probably.
Now keep
And
in
that's
mind
what's stuck
too.
in my mind.
Keep in mind too, throughout this entire case, this supposed investigation, Scott Tadich was known to drive a green Ford Ranger. And so,
Oh yeah.
you know.
You know, yeah.
Mhm.
There's a tidbit on
Interesting.
that too, right?
Mhm.
The
I'm not going to
hunters,
drag it on, but I'm just
the
saying.
hunters seeing a vehicle there by the turnabout and somebody in waders in the creek,
Yep.
river, whatever it is.
The
Mhm.
turkey hunters. You can get that call. All right. Anything else on Scott? We could go on Scott all day.
Right. Jesus.
I want to keep it simple, but I wanted facts out there for people who are interested in understanding some of this more about these individuals. I wanted to just try to place a few known facts out there, for them to be able to research anything they wanted to. There's a few things right there.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think the guilters love to say, "Man fooled 20 million people," and all these Stephen Avery fanboys. All they've done is watch the show, and they don't do any independent research. And if you can't find a lot of independent research gems in that last discussion, then I'm sad.
Well,
for
this
you.
this is really good for any new people, and we are still picking up new people to this case. Most recently, Kim Kardashian has shown support for Brendan, and I'm sure she has lots of followers, and that probably brought new people in. And they might not have heard a lot of this, and
She'll probably be on our Discord channel by the end of the week. Wouldn't you think, Phoebe? She knows all about us.
I think it would be blown up by then. I don't
Yeah,
know
come on over and join
if Discord
us
can
on
hold
Discord.
I don't know if
5
Discord can
million.
hold 9 million people in one server, but
Yeah, but come on over to Discord. If you enjoy talking about the case, come on over to our Discord channel. We have a ton of knowledgeable people, and it's very active during most of the day. We have
middle of the
people
night
from Australia.
Yeah.
Well, for us, it's not. For them, it's not the middle of the night. The Australians, it's the middle of the day for them.
Right.
When it's midnight for all through the night for us, and we have Slovenia, the UK.
24-hour server.
Yeah, we all different coasts. I'm on the East Coast. We have Neverly on the West Coast, and we have BB in Manitowoc time. Right, so we have the time zones covered. So come on over to Discord and talk with us if you enjoy talking about the case. We'll leave a link into our Discord server in the description, and you too can, if you want to come tell us about how Stephen is guilty, we'll be glad to debate you. Come on our channel. We'll have a little debate.
Yeah.
Thanks everybody for joining us on Thirsty for Theory Thursdays. We hope to see you next week. This has been a Foul Play production.